been making coffee and training baristas how to make coffee for ages, but to be honest, I don't really know a huge amount about the roasting process. Can you tell me a little bit more about it?
Sure, Aymon. From green bean to cup, the roasting process is really quite critical, because what we're doing is that we're taking a natural product, green coffee, and we're converting it into a product that you can use in your grinder. And depending on the type of coffee that we're putting into our blend or single origin, so we're talking about flavors and profiles, what we then do is put it into the roaster. And over a period of time, and it's usually around about 15 minutes, the green coffee will change color, will lose a bit of moisture, and will come out brown. And that's similar to what you see in your grinder. Now, depending on when we bring it out will determine the final taste. So just like bread in a toaster, if you put a slice of bread in a toaster and leave it there for a short period of time, it'll come out light. The tastes of that bread will be quite thin, same as coffee. A light roasted coffee will be quite thin and flavoursome. The longer we leave the coffee in the roaster, the darker it gets, and the tastes will change. A lot of the full bodiness will come through, a lot of the caramel and chocolate flavours will start to enhance in the coffee. So it's a combination of the coffee that you use, one, and two, the way that you roast it. Then we will reach the final product.
So how does this thing work?
Amy, this is a coffee roaster. It's a drum roaster, and we put in 7 kilos of green coffee, and over a 15-minute period, it will turn into the lovely brown coffee that you know. It's quite a simple process. We have gas-fired jets underneath that heat the drum up. The coffee goes in the top and it rotates over that period of time. We're sampling the coffee during the roasting process to make sure that the colour is right. And after about 15 minutes, we'll drop it out into the cooling tray. And this will bring the coffee down from around about 215 degrees to a temperature where we can handle it and bag it. And then it's over to Aymon to sell. Amy, we're just coming into the last few minutes of this roast. Come on and have a look. You'll notice here that the coffee has changed colour and it's just about ready to pop out. It's really important to get the coffee at the right time. And that time is now. So Amy, let's have a look at this coffee. It's a New Guinea Sigri A grade, beautiful coffee. I've roasted it to a full medium colour, and the taste profile that we get of that will be chocolate with a bit of caramel. It'll be great through an espresso machine, you'll love it.
David, what's the best way to store the coffee?
Well, that's a great question. The answer to that is, for me, is not necessarily where you should store it, more to the point of what doesn't coffee like? And we know that there are certain things that coffee really doesn't like, and maybe you could help me out here. Amy, have you any ideas what coffee doesn't like?
Moisture?
Moisture. Keep it well away from anything wet or damp. That's 1. 2?
Do strong smells affect it?
Yeah. Any smells that are around the coffee will be absorbed into the coffee, so certainly don't store it in your spice anywhere near spices. 3rd one would be?
I imagine like it's any food. Heat?
Any food? Heat. It doesn't like changes in temperature. It doesn't like heat, certainly. Ones that people don't get is that it doesn't like age. So we talked about freshness, and it's really to ensure that you keep your coffee fresh. Best way to do that is in bean format. So only grind as much coffee as you need for each cup that you're making. What's something else you think that it might not like?
Probably exposure to the air.
Yeah, very much so, yeah. So we've got to keep it in a tight environment, and the bags that you buy your coffee in are really great for that. So whenever you open the bag of coffee, always close it down and keep it tight. I sometimes put a rubber band around my coffee just to keep it fresh.
David, that smells really, really fresh. How long is that going to last for?
Aymon, one of the things that we need to realise when we're talking about coffee is that it's a commodity. And this is in great condition right now. But over time, we'll notice that a lot of the flavours and the good qualities of coffee will start to deteriorate. So we've got to use it at its best time. With regards to an espresso machine, we have what's called a window of opportunity. And we've tasted these products for about 3 months. We find that they drop slightly at the start of the period, and then they start to gain in quality and body. And that's the point where we need to use them. So for me, it's around about day 7, day 8 is when you should start using this coffee, and probably about day 21. So there's a nice little opportunity there to use great coffee. After that point, we're finding that the coffee will really start to go off, and some of the negative flavours will come through in the taste of the coffee.
So how does all of this affect the taste?
Well, Amy, we're trying to achieve the perfect cup of coffee. And I've talked about the green bean side of things, how the green bean buyer will go and select the coffee from origin, and that's depending on the climatic conditions, the soil content, the methods of process, etc. The second part we talked about is the roasting, how we can take those green coffees, we can take it through the roasting, and depending on when we bring it out of the roaster, it will impact on the final taste. For me, it comes down to what I call the journey. It's what happens in the mouth. And it's very important that the blender ensures that they give the customer what they want. So what happens in our organisation is that the sales rep will say, David, I want this particular coffee. And we will need to tick off all the boxes through the mouth. So if we wanted a coffee that was very sweet at the front of the mouth, we would buy a particular type of coffee, probably an Indian. If we wanted a coffee that was full-bodied and rich, we might look at a Brazil or a Sumatran. Or if we wanted a coffee that had bright, brisk, late notes at the back of the mouth, we would be looking at a Sigri, which is what we roasted here today. Then what we can do is that we can blend all those coffees together so we get a distinct journey through the mouth. What you want in the taste of the coffee is something that is sweet at the front, full-bodied in the middle, and has some little tingly effects at the end. And it's quite balanced. Very important to have a balanced coffee.
So David, can you tell me some signs that I should look for when I'm evaluating my espresso shots?
Certainly, Amy. The first one is a visual one. By looking at the espresso, you're going to get a really good indicator as to the quality of it. It's called a crema. It's that thick oil that's across the top of the coffee. And if it's there and it's really persistent and consistent, then chances are you've got a great coffee. If it's not there, then something's gone wrong. So if we look at the coffee in front of us, there's a couple indicators straight away. First of all, the tide marks. You can see that it looks like the tide has gone out. And that's because the crema that was there to start with has died. Secondly, looking into the coffee, you're going to notice there are some coffee signs around the outside. So the lack of crema is a great indicator that the coffee probably wasn't poured well. So I would probably take that coffee back to the machine and start again. It's not the sort of product that I would give to a customer. Let's just compare this coffee that you've just made for me. And it's straight away you're seeing some differences. The crema is looking very consistent. It's a nice colour all the way through. And look at the persistency in the coffee. I'm going to tilt it sideways. You can see the crema has gone up the side of the cup. This is a clear indication that it's going to be a lovely coffee, and you've done a great job there. Well done. So, Amy, those were the visuals, the crema. Why don't we have a look at the taste and the aroma of these two coffees? I'll do it for you. Does my face tell you? The coffee's not quite right. I talked about the journey through the mouth, ticking the right boxes. There's a few empty boxes in that coffee, and I got a really sharp characteristic at the back. The sort of word that people might use would be bitter. Not memorable. Now let's have a look at this one. That's a lot better. It's a full-bodied coffee. I'm getting a lovely chocolate flavour in the coffee, and it's really well balanced. That's the sort of coffee I could start drinking and I could consume the whole thing and I'd be really happy.
So I understand a lot of the time if the espresso goes wrong, it's my fault. But when can I look at the beans?
Amy, every time you open up a bag of coffee from your supplier, you should be smelling the coffee and having a look at it before you put it into the hopper. So for instance, let's have a look at these products in front of us here. If this is the colour and the consistency of the coffee that you receive on a weekly basis, you know what the taste is, your customers know what the taste is, then if for some reason you get something that doesn't look like all the other coffees, then maybe something's gone wrong. Now there's a lot of things that could have gone wrong. Could be that the coffee was left at the back of the cupboard and it's a little bit old, so you've got to be aware of that. It could be that you maybe supplied the wrong product, who knows. The other thing to look at, and I'm going to show you this example here, if you have a look at these coffee beans, they're all broken and chipped. They're actually not very nice. You can clearly see something has gone wrong in the transportation of that coffee. So that's an indicator straight away.
That's great. What about oil content?
Oh, great question, Amy. Do you remember when we were back at the roaster and we were roasting the coffee for 15 minutes and it came out that nice chocolate brown colour? If we were to leave the coffee in the roaster for a little bit longer, 16, 17, 18 minutes, then the colour of the coffee will start to get darker. Coffee gets to a point, we sometimes call the second crack, where you hear the coffee cracking in the roaster. It's after that point you're going to get more oil coming out on the coffee. So if you look at this particular one here, it's quite oily. It's not a negative thing. In fact, the flavours that will come out of that coffee will be quite full and round. A lot of chocolate flavours, caramel flavours. But of course, Amy, the other thing to take into consideration is consistency. And we've talked about consistency quite a lot. If you are receiving this particular product on a daily basis or a weekly basis, and all of a sudden you get a product that's oily, then you need to make your boss aware of that. There could be something wrong with the coffee. So although the colour of the coffee through the roasting process will indicate whether it's got some oil coming through, also coffee that's a little bit stale, if it's a medium roast, some of the pales will come through and the coffee will oil up.
So David, if I've done all of the steps right and I know that I've made a nice espresso shot and someone sends it back, what should I do then?
Oh, customer complaints. Now that's a toughie. Very hard to evaluate customer complaints, but let me give you some ideas, and this is not black and white. Generally speaking, your cafe will have consistent customers. They're the people who come in every single day. They know you, they know your coffee, and they know what to expect. If you get a complaint from them, you really need to listen to them, because maybe something's gone wrong. And if you get a complaint from them, you might well know that the complaint is on your shoulders. Because as a barista, every coffee that you make, you are aware of it. And when you make a mistake, sometimes there's a little thing sitting on your shoulder that says, you didn't do that so well. And that will cause a complaint. The other sort of customer who complains is maybe a customer who's not aware or conscious of what you're producing. Maybe they go to a particular cafe across the road and they get a certain type of coffee, and you produce something that's just a little bit different. What they're saying is, I don't like the difference. They're not necessarily saying I don't like your coffee. So it's quite important to try and decipher which customer complaint is which.